Have you ever wondered why we're afraid not of space itself, but of what it might hide? As children, we were afraid of the dark because we didn't know what was in it. Today we have grown up, but the darkness remains, only now it is called the universe. And it is there, in this bottomless blackness, that something is now flying that has called into question everything we knew about physics. Comet 3 Atlas. Officially, it is an interstellar body that arrived from the depths of the galaxy. Unofficially, it may be the first object recorded whose behavior does not obey the laws of gravity. NASA scientists claim that 3 Atlas is just an active comet. But why is it accelerating, losing mass, instead of slowing down, as Newton's law dictates? Why do the magnetic fields around it register bursts of energy, as if something were at work inside? Why is it glowing blue when it should be fading? These questions have been hanging in the air for months with no answers. Or maybe there are answers, but they're just not being published. After all, for the first time in decades, scientists have acknowledged that some 3I Atlas data is classified due to anomalous observation parameters. October 29, 2025, the date when the comet passed perihelion, became something of a day of silence for astronomy. Observatories participating in the Atlas program have obtained conflicting measurements. Some telescopes recorded a drop in brightness, others a sharp jump, as if the comet had turned on its light. This cannot be explained by the simple physics of ice evaporation. Harvard's Avi Loeb wrote, "If the data are correct, we are dealing with a controlled release of energy. But who or what could control it?" ESA engineers even joked, "Atlas isn't a comet, it's a black box of the universe." The irony is that there is too much truth in this joke. After all, no one can say exactly what the core consists of. Its spectrum reflects a metal, but not iron, not nickel, not aluminum, but an unknown alloy not found in any system visited by our probes. Too dense, too perfect in shape. And all this reminds us not of a stone, but of a structure. But if it's not a natural object, then the main question arises, who created it? Michio Kaku doesn't rule out the possibility that 3I Atlas is an artifact of an ancient civilization. In one interview he said, "If humanity can send satellites into interstellar space, why couldn't someone else do the same millions of years ago?" And that thought is frightening. Not because we might meet aliens, but because we might already have met them and just didn't notice. There is also a darker version. Some astronomical data experts argue that 3I Atlas is moving on a trajectory that is too smooth for a natural object. It seems to use the sun as a gravitational catapult, which requires the most precise calculation of angle and speed. Our spacecraft use similar maneuvers during interplanetary flights. If a comet does the same thing, who directed it? Coincidence isn't that precise. NASA does not officially confirm this hypothesis, but does not deny it either. Avi Loeb says bluntly, "Every attempt to attribute what we observe to error only takes us further from the truth. We must consider all possibilities, including artificial origin." His words sound like a challenge and a warning. After all, if 3I Atlas was really created by someone, it means that this someone knew about us long before we learned to look at the sky. There is one more oddity. During observations, the Hubble telescope recorded rhythmic flashes every 4 hours and 36 minutes. Officially, it is the rotation of the nucleus. Unofficially, this is too precise an interval. The flashes are like a code, repeating with machine precision. Some enthusiasts even try to translate this light rhythm into binary code. The resulting signal resembled a mathematical sequence, prime numbers following one after the other. This can't be a coincidence. Prime numbers are a universal language used in theoretical SETI models to communicate with extraterrestrial intelligence. It is at this moment that the fear of the unknown turns into awareness. We are afraid not that space is full of mysteries, but that it might answer, which he already answered. Perhaps 3 Atlas is more than just a comet. This is a question that humanity is not yet ready to answer. After reports of light flashes and magnetic pulses around 3I Atlas began circulating in scientific forums, several files dating back to October 2025 suddenly disappeared from NASA's public archives. Formally, it's a synchronization error. But those who managed to save them claim that the original tables contained radiation levels that were 10 times higher than those acceptable for an ordinary comet. The agency later replaced them with refined data in which all the anomalies were smoothed out. Coincidence? Unlikely. Too often, coincidences appear precisely where the unknown begins. Almost simultaneously, the European Space Observatory reported that some telemetry from the ALMA radio interferometer had lost synchronization with the time grid. Simply put, the data no longer matched in time. This can happen if the signal reflected from the object arrives with a delay that cannot be explained by the distance. This is impossible for an ordinary comet. But if there is a dense metal structure inside 3I Atlas that reflects radio waves not linearly, but by modulating them, then everything becomes clearer. We see not a device error, but interference. An Atlas project engineer, speaking on condition of anonymity, told Sky at Night that a strange file, labeled Unknown Source 02, appeared in the database the day before perihelion passage. The file contained a sequence of numbers and Latin letters resembling telemetry encoding, but without decryption. A few hours later, the post was deleted. Since then, no one has officially acknowledged that such a file existed. However, the ALMA archive contains an activity log, where the time of its loading coincides with the moment of the anomalous increase in the comet's brightness. At the same time, users of independent astronomical networks noticed that the object was changing the direction of its reflected light. Typically, a comet's tail always faces away from the sun, but 3I Atlas briefly formed a second, opposite tail, as if the radiation was coming from within. ESA attributed this to a measurement error due to the illumination of the sensors. But MIT physicist Julian Fenwick noted, the errors don't repeat with perfect periodicity every 4 hours. In mid-November 2025, another detail leaked. According to sources at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, some employees have been instructed not to discuss the characteristics of the plasma glow of the object until the official report is released. This kind of wording had never been used before, even during the Oumuamua studies. It looked like an attempt to block information that might cause panic. After all, if a comet really emits a controlled plasma field, then it is not just flying, it is functioning. Professor Avi Loeb, commenting on the event, said, "Truth does not need approval. If physics cannot explain what is observed, this does not mean that what is observed does not exist." His article in Scientific American caused a scandal. Some scientists accused him of sensationalism. But it was after this that the 3I Atlas topic went beyond scientific circles. Headlines like "Comet with Intelligence" and "Who Controls the Interstellar Visitor" began appearing in the news. Meanwhile, a team of researchers from Chicago discovered that the change in the comet's speed coincides with solar storm cycles, but with a delay of exactly 17 hours. The delay is too precise to be random. It looks like a reaction, as if the object is analyzing the particle stream and responding. This kind of feedback is observed in automatic satellites, but not in natural bodies. If 3I Atlas is indeed responding to solar stimuli, then it is sensing its external environment. Michio Kaku suggested that we may be dealing with a self-regulating piece of matter, something between a mechanism and an organism. If an object is capable of changing its behavior depending on conditions, it is alive in the physical sense. We are witnessing the emergence of a new type of existence, not biological, but technological. These words caused a real shock. After all, if 3I Atlas doesn't just fly, but reacts, then it's not a ship, but something more complex. Perhaps an autonomous unit programmed to study systems like ours. Amid growing interest, NASA published a new report, 184 pages long, but nearly a third of it was classified as restricted. Where acceleration graphs were expected, there were empty tables. Where the spectra should be, there are notes saying "data being clarified." Even the scientists involved in the project did not receive full access. All this has given rise to rumors that Comet 3I Atlas is part of a program that we are not being told about. Some independent researchers believe the reason for the secrecy is simple. If we accept that 3I Atlas is showing signs of control, we must also accept that the sky above us is not empty, that someone is watching us just as we are watching them. And then the usual feeling of security will disappear. We are no longer the center of surveillance. We are the object of surveillance. When rumors of forbidden data spread beyond the scientific community, the most interesting thing began. Some independent researchers claim that Comet 3I Atlas may not be an isolated object, but part of an entire system. Several telescopes observing the area of the sky from which it had flown in recorded two more faint signals. Small objects following almost the same trajectory but at different distances from each other. NASA called them background meteoroids, but astronomers, having compared the speeds, noticed a coincidence. All three were moving with practically the same acceleration, which could not be explained by gravity. If this is true, then 3I Atlas is not alone. She is just part of a chain that stretches across the galaxy. Some scientists have already named this chain the observer stream. The hypothesis states that millions of years ago, some civilization created a network of automatic probes that collect data on young systems and transmit it to each other, using the gravity of stars as relays. Each probe can be disguised as a comet, so that no one would suspect it of artificial origin. And if 3I Atlas is one of them, then perhaps it has already transmitted the data further, somewhere beyond Pluto, into the same abyss from which it came. Rumors within NASA suggest that in January 2026, an unexplained radio pulse was detected in the 2.1 GHz range, precisely in the area where the outgoing 3I Atlas was expected to be. The pulse lasted only 3 seconds, but its energy was 10 times greater than that of a typical solar flare. The data was kept in the internal analysis section and was not published again. The official version is interference from communication satellites. Informal. Feedback. It was as if 3I Atlas had not just flown away, but had declared mission accomplished. The only question is what kind of mission this is. Avi Loeb, in a recent interview, suggested that the purpose of such objects is not to observe, but to collect emotional data, the reaction of intelligent species to the inexplicable. Perhaps we are not an experiment, but a survey. We were given a riddle to see how we would react to it. This thought is both inspiring and frightening. Because if all of this is really true, then someone is right now watching us try to understand ourselves. Some physicists have put forward a different version. If 3I Atlas is indeed a probe network, then their goal is not contact, but the restoration of the universe after the Great Cycle. There is a hypothesis that universes repeat themselves, and after each collapse into a black hole, the remnants of the previous life send out instructions for the new one. In this case, comets are carriers of the genetic code of space. They sow matter from which planets, and perhaps even life, are born. If this is true, then 3I Atlas is not a guest, but a courier. She didn't come to observe. She came to remind us that everything in the universe repeats itself. This is perhaps precisely what scientists are afraid of. Not the facts themselves, but the fact that the facts are too clear. Because if we accept that 3I Atlas is part of an intelligent system, we will have to answer the question of where we are in this hierarchy. Are we explorers or exhibits? Creators or creatures? The one looking through the telescope or the one being looked at? This realization is more terrifying than any scientific discovery. By November 2025, observations of 3I Atlas become increasingly rare as the object moves beyond the orbit of Mars, gradually losing brightness. But telescopes still pick up short pulses of light, as if someone were sending signals from far away. They are weak, almost indistinguishable, but stable. And the further the comet goes, the more it seems that its departure is not the end, but the beginning of something. NASA calls this residual activity. Avi Loeb, the final touch of the message. Scientists increasingly avoid giving direct answers. The official reports contain the usual wording. The data is being refined, the spectrum is stabilizing, and the acceleration is consistent with the models. But behind the scenes, astrophysicists admit that 3I Atlas behaves too systematically to be a coincidence. Its trajectory seems to be calculated in advance. It follows an imaginary line connecting the orbits of Jupiter and Saturn, as if following a route. One of the classified reports from the European Space Agency included the phrase, "The object shows signs of dynamic self-alignment." In simple terms, it corrects its own trajectory, compensating for disturbances in gravitational fields. No known comet does this. To align yourself, you need to know where you want to go. And if 3 Atlas does indeed correct motion, then it has a purpose. But where is it headed? Some say it's heading toward the Oort cloud, a region where new comets are thought to be born. Others believe that this is not a departure at all, but a transition, as if she is returning to where she came from. There is even a theory that 3I Atlas is part of a cyclical program of messenger comets that orbit between star systems to test them for intelligence. When one civilization reaches a certain level of technology, its system receives a visit from a similar object. If you look at it as an experiment, everything becomes logical. An object appears when humanity is already capable of observing, but not yet ready to understand. He creates information noise to see how we react. Some panic, some seek the truth, some try to hide it. And perhaps it is this reaction that becomes the signal that the comet transmits further. Then 3I Atlas is not just a probe, but a mirror. It doesn't show the universe, it shows us. Professor Michio Kaku remarked at a November symposium, "The main discovery of the 21st century may not be that we have found aliens, but that they are already studying us through their own mechanisms." He suggested that such objects could collect information, not about the physics of planets, but about the behavior of intelligent beings, about the reaction of society, the speed of news dissemination, the level of panic. After all, the easiest way to understand a species is not by its speech, but by how it reacts to fear. This idea sounds frighteningly plausible, because humanity has really changed in recent months. News about 3I Atlas has gone viral, with hundreds of channels publishing exposés and millions of people following every NASA update. People argue, create theories, look for signs. The irony is that perhaps that is precisely the goal. We became part of an experiment without even realizing it. At the end of October, astronomers from the University of Hawaii reportedly detected a short pulse, a microwave oscillation with a clear amplitude recorded at a frequency of 1420 megahertz, the classical range of hydrogen. This is the channel of life, and it is on this frequency that SETI expects alien signals. Coincidence? Possibly. But if we accept that 3I Atlas uses the natural elements of the universe to transmit information, the choice of hydrogen frequency becomes symbolic. Each atom of which we are composed already has a language of communication embedded in it. NASA described the burst as a local atmospheric reflection. However, 2 days later, reports from the Green Bank Radio Telescope mentioned repeat pulses of similar shape. The object was already at the limit of radio visibility, and yet it seemed like someone or something continued to say goodbye. Since then, two camps have emerged in the scientific community. The first are realists, confident that everything can be explained by physics. The second group are new generation researchers who believe that what they are seeing is not just a cosmic body, but a system for transmitting information in the form of matter. Not the signal, not the radio wave, but the trajectory itself, the brightness, the chemical composition. All this is part of the message. To decipher it, you need to observe, not listen. Perhaps that is exactly what we are doing. Each of our telescopes, each spectrum, each graph is a line from the cosmic script. We read it without understanding the language, but we feel the meaning. We sense that behind the icy shell of 3I Atlas lies not emptiness, but intention. This may be a warning, or an invitation, or simply a mark. There is life here, we can continue. But if 3I Atlas really is a messenger, why isn't anyone talking about it openly? The answer is simple. Humanity isn't ready. We still measure the world in numbers, not in meanings. We look for evidence, but we fail to notice the obvious. The very fact that space has already entered into a dialogue with us. We just don't know how to listen. When the comet disappeared beyond visibility, only a thin trace remained in the sky. And at that moment, thousands of people around the world felt the same thing, a strange calm. It was as if someone finally made sure we heard. Perhaps this was the end of the experiment, or maybe the beginning of a new stage. Now 3I Atlas is moving further and further away, but the feeling of its presence does not disappear. The archives contain hundreds of gigabytes of data that have not yet been decrypted, and perhaps someday someone will open them and find not graphs, not numbers, but an image. A symmetrical pattern that repeats the structure of human DNA. And then it will become clear that we were not simply observing a comet. We met our own reflection, sent through billions of years. So if you look up at the sky tonight and see a single point of light, remember it might be looking back. 3 Atlas hasn't disappeared. It's just waiting for us to stop being afraid. And then, perhaps, the fear of the unknown will turn into understanding. After all, only those who have stopped being afraid are able to see the truth.